Hey, you wanted to see me?
Justin, glad you could drop by. Have a seat.
Hey, what's up?
Well, I've been reading again.
Uh-oh. That means you have work for me, doesn't it?
You bet. I saw an article about DevOps and it made me think, I want one of those.
You want a DevOps? But that's...
I know, right? That's incredible. Any idea where to get one?
I don't think you can just get one.
That's the spirit. Have one for me sometime next week.
Well, I guess I need to find a DevOps. But this means I get to go on a quest. This quest will be full of danger and peril, but fear not, dear viewer. I will not be harmed. I will find the mystery of the DevOps, because that's what Kubernetes admins do. Not here. Hummus. Trick or treat. Don't you have any DevOps?
No.
Maybe there's a DevOps under here. Definitely not there. I do not remember this room being in the house before. Yes! Hey, we know each other. He's a friend from work.
Yeah, I'm really stuck at this point, so I'm gonna see if I can call my buddy Mike Cade. Mike, are you available here? You there?
Hey Justin, how's it going?
It's Michael Cade. So I'm glad you could join us today. I've been having a real hard time wrapping my head around this idea of DevOps. Can you help me with that?
Yeah, sure. What do you need?
Well, first of all, what is it?
Apart from a bit of a buzzword, it actually does have some like cement behind it. If you think of it as a bit of a process and principle, so how are we going to get something from A to B? How are we going to develop software in a much more efficient, agile type methodology and get it out to our customers or get it out to our end users? And there's a lot of principles and processes around that infinite loop that really make up that. There's a lot of tooling that could be quite overwhelming though when you start looking into DevOps. So I think that's probably where you might be maybe a little bit confused, Justin.
Can you tell me if the Kubernetes piece is part of DevOps? Is anything else involved there?
DevOps specifically is not exclusive to Kubernetes. I think Kubernetes is a platform that we can run our applications and workloads on, but still physical, virtual, cloud, they're all platforms that should and could leverage DevOps principles and processes.
What sort of DevOps principles and processes are there? I mean, what sort of things are we looking at there?
So if you are a software development house, then you're going to be looking at, well, how do we plan what we're doing? How do we build it? How do we then think about testing, releasing? And then how do we get that continuous feedback, that continuous loop of continuous monitoring, continuous integration, continuous deployment, all of those other CI/CD type buzzwords that we see within there. But ultimately, it's about how do we get the software into our environment as fast as possible and a little bit more frequent. So I think gone are the days are of where maybe we have a software release that is released every 6 to 12 months. We're now releasing software every 2 weeks or even shorter periods than that.
So would you say that the cloud is kind of driving that methodology, or is it something else?
I think, yeah, the speed of market is one area. I think just also the portability of that, like Kubernetes or in general, applications are getting smaller, but they're being scaled accordingly, whichever platform you choose to use them on. So being able to release faster or fail faster so that you can learn from your mistakes and release better product or better software or better projects, that's encouraging businesses to take on DevOps as a way in which we want to use within our within our environments.
Okay. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of places to find information. Do you have any suggestions of any sort of, I don't know, blogs?
I would say that I had a good understanding of what DevOps is and what it does, but I felt like there was a few gaps in there. Like there was a lot of, well, what does actual what does the CI mean, and what does the CD mean in CI/CD pipelines? What does actually spending days on end or as a daily driver with Linux and other areas of DevOps? So I took the beginning of the year, the first 90 days of the year, actually January the 1st to March the 31st, and I documented every day around 12 areas of DevOps and the tooling that goes with it, a lot of hands-on. So 90 days of DevOps should give a good foundational knowledge to anyone that follows it on some of the platforms, some of the areas of infrastructure as code and configuration management, cloud-based workloads, just stuff around that. Like, you're not going to be an expert by any means, but I think that actually resembles DevOps to a degree as well, in that you're going to be a jack of all trades versus a master of one. And I think that's important to remember when you get into that DevOps world or DevOps scene.
From what I've seen of this blog series, it's really resonated with people in the industry. Why do you think that is? Is it where you've hosted it, or is it something else?
So if we think about DevOps from a time frame, DevOps has been spoken about since around like 2009, so a long time ago. But now it just seems to be coming into the mainstream. People are actually adopting these methodologies, these principles and processes, and maybe I just hit the right time, and that's what got the visibility. But also, I feel like the learning in public is a huge factor to that. There's a lot of free resources out there. Getting familiar with the cloud native ecosystem around Kubernetes and everything as a platform is one area, but I think it just hits the right mark from a foundational knowledge. Like, we're not learning how to become a developer. We're not going deep into these areas. I basically took 7 days to look at one particular area and then moved on. Like, we're not spending 100 days on Kubernetes, or we're not spending 100 days, which I know some people in the community are doing that as well, which is great. My attention span isn't good enough for that.
Out of all the blog platforms available out there, the WordPresses, the Mediums, why did you choose GitHub for this blog?
Get more familiar with Git. One of the sections in there is actually using 7 days of Git and Git-based services such as GitHub and GitLab. Again, it's very open. I wanted to use it as a bit of a version control system. I actually started using Git as well with all my presentations and sessions. So we have version 1, version 2 of my PowerPoint presentation. So you can keep track of things a little bit better in there than maybe something like OneDrive, or maybe I have it in OneDrive and in Git. So I've got multiple copies of that, or it's in multiple locations. It just felt like I was eating my own dog food at that point, like by using Git as a version control system and then being able to make it public as well. So amazingly, there's been well over 50 contributors around the community that have maybe sorted out my spelling mistakes and stuff like that within the repository. So another mind-blowing thing that's happened is it's been translated into various different languages, Chinese, Japanese, which me personally alone, like on a blog site, for example, on WordPress, I'm never going to do that. I barely speak English. So I felt like that was an important thing, but completely unforeseen as well.
And everybody knows dog food is delicious. So you should always...
Would normally use champagne, right? Drink your own champagne. But each to their own, Justin.
So my boss, he's asking me to get him a DevOps, and I don't know what to tell him. So what do I tell him? What's the best way to start this process?
So there is you don't go to the shop, the store, and buy a DevOps SKU off the shelf. I think that's the first important thing to note to your boss. I think what you need to understand from your boss, what's the goal? Let's think about how we deploy it. Let's think about how we can automate that. Think about how that looks in 6 months' time when a new release comes out. Let's think about how we can potentially develop against that and use that. Let's understand what the goal is first, and then we can start adopting some of those DevOps principles and processes into that, as well as then choosing the tools. Because you're right, Justin, like there's an overwhelming amount of tools out there that like you could spend a year just looking at infrastructure as code tools or just learn in the cloud. So you need to really understand what the goal is and how we're going to get there using that methodology.
Awesome. Sounds like I've got a lot of places to start here. So, thanks so much for helping me out. And I think we've nailed it.
Okay, so I think I have some idea of what DevOps is now. It's more about people and not something you can buy. And Michael Cade was so awesome for dropping by and helping me learn more about it. And I hope you did too. Be sure to check out the next episode of Nailed It, where I learn all about disaster.